Let's start in Ukraine, where Kyiv has summoned a US diplomat over a decision to suspend weapons shipments. On Tuesday, the White House confirmed that some US deliveries had been put on pause over concerns that US stockpiles are too low. The US has not said what weapons would be affected or the scale of the rollback, but it's believed to include Patriot air defense missiles and artillery shells. Ukraine has been urgently requesting more Patriots to protect its cities from Russian attacks. The US has provided tens of billions of dollars of military aid to Ukraine since the invasion by Russia in 2022. A White House spokesperson said the decision was being made to put America's interests first. Russia has welcomed the news, saying it would bring the war closer to an end. Kyiv is warning, though, any delays will only embolden Moscow. Let's bring you the reaction first from one Ukrainian MP.
This decision is certainly very unpleasant for us. It's painful, and against the background of the terrorist attacks which Russia commits against Ukraine, against peaceful towns, cities, villages, citizens of Ukraine that die almost every day from such terrorist attacks, it's a very unpleasant situation.
Let's take you live to Kyiv. We can join our correspondent there, Paul Adams, and in Moscow is our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg. Paul, just hearing there what a blow this could potentially be for Ukraine. Just give us a sense of the reaction there.
Well, it's very interesting because, as that clip just illustrated, there is an immediate kind of shudder of horror at the possibility that some of this vitally needed defensive equipment will somehow no longer be available or at some point may be withdrawn. But there's a statement in the last 20 minutes or so from the Defence Ministry, which I'm going to quote from because I think it's quite important. It says, first of all, there has been no official confirmation of any suspension yet. The Defence Ministry says it's looking for further information. That's obviously why we saw the US diplomat being called to the Foreign Ministry to explain exactly what's going on. And also the Defence Ministry is urging people not essentially to jump to conclusions, not to speak about things without adequate information. This is not a repeat of the situation we had back earlier in the year following that dreadful row between Volodymyr Zelensky and President Trump in the Oval Office, in which the US suspended aid shipments and intelligence cooperation for a week. There's nothing of that nature going on. This is a US decision to look at its dwindling stocks of equipment, dwindling because of obviously supplies to Ukraine, but also events in the Middle East, and to take stock of exactly where the US inventories are. So we don't know how long this suspension is going to last. We also don't know precisely which items of equipment are going to be affected, although, as you say, there's been a lot of focus on Patriot missiles and also on the missiles used by F-16 jets to intercept ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. So there is certainly a great deal of anxiety, but everyone from the president on down is basically saying, let's find out what is really happening here.
A great deal of anxiety, Steve, and also these real concerns that this could embolden Russia. Have we had a response from the Kremlin?
Yes, a short while ago on the daily Kremlin conference call, Dmitry Peskov, Vladimir Putin's spokesman, was asked for his reaction to this news. He didn't say very much, but what he did say was the fewer weapons that Ukraine is supplied with, the sooner the special military operation will end. The special military operation being the label the Russians give to Russia's war in Ukraine. Now, what he said was obviously not earth-shattering. It was obvious, right? And Russia obviously is pleased at the prospect of less US military assistance to Ukraine, because US military aid to Ukraine has been so important in helping Ukraine get to where it is now, to helping Ukraine survive the Russian invasion.
Russia is mounting attacks on Ukraine night after night, Paul, and I'm sure if you asked anyone on the streets of Kyiv, they would tell you that they really need these Patriots. That's the one thing every Ukrainian understands. Can you explain to us a bit more about what Patriots do?
Yeah, so essentially you have a kind of multi-layered air defense system designed to protect cities like Kiev and other big cities, and of course also military and industrial facilities. That involves, at the very highest end, the Patriot missile. It's a highly sophisticated system designed to intercept ballistic missiles, probably the single most deadly threat posed by Russia. Then, of course, you have all sorts of other systems, from machine guns mounted on the back of pickup trucks on the ground to F-16 jets supplied by the West, which can fire missiles at incoming cruise missiles, and also in some cases drones. All of that is really important, and the F-16s actually over the past year have really proved themselves a vital component of all of this. It's worth noting this, though. At the moment, the US accounts for around 20% of the weaponry arriving in Ukraine. Europe about 25%, and Ukraine itself around 50%. But it is that crucial high-end equipment, like the Patriots, like the missiles used on the F-16s. Those are the things that Ukraine knows it can really only get from the United States until such time as it either builds its own capability or can somehow get it from somewhere else.
Steve, there is obviously ongoing conversations being had around the world about how to stop this war and influence the outcomes. We know that President Macron has also spoken to President Putin in the last 24 hours. That's the first time in 3 years. What's come out of that?
Yeah, that was interesting and a little bit unexpected. This telephone call happened yesterday. As you say, the first time in just under 3 years that President Macron and President Putin have spoken. Today, the Kremlin said it was the initiative of President Macron to make this call. They spoke reportedly for more than 2 hours about the situation in the Middle East, but of course also about the situation in Ukraine. On the Middle East, the two sides seem to have more in common, have more of a common approach. But from the Kremlin readout and the Paris readout of the call on Ukraine, the two sides seem diametrically opposed. I mean, President Macron was making it clear that offering his unwavering support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity and calling for a ceasefire as soon as possible. Vladimir Putin, according to the Kremlin readout, blaming the West for the conflict in Ukraine, as he has done all along, talking about Ukraine having been turned by the West into an anti-Russian bridgehead, and talking again, as he has done repeatedly, about the need to remove the, quote, root causes of the conflict and take into account the realities on the ground. So no sign from the readouts that the positions of Russia and France are any closer on Ukraine.
And Steve, given the losses that are being sustained every single day, is there any pressure inside Russia on President Putin to bring this conflict to an end?
Well, if you talk about public opinion, I wouldn't say the Kremlin is feeling pressure from the Russian public. Certainly there is a fatigue when you speak to people. People talk about the war, and they do use that word war. They don't say special military operation. People can see that it's a war. They switch on the television. They see tanks and artillery. It's a war. And so many people who speak to us say, we want this to be over as soon as possible. We want peace. Well, then you ask people, how can the peace be achieved? Many people say, well, we can't influence that. It's up to the people in power to decide how to do that. Some people say, well, we need negotiations, we need talks. Other people say peace can only be achieved by a Russian victory. So different approaches, but certainly we're in the 4th year of this war now, and it's had devastating consequences, of course, first and foremost for Ukraine, the scale of death and destruction there. But people here in Russia are feeling tired, and the economy is starting to buckle. Almost every day the Russian newspapers, and this is a very controlled media environment, right? But in the Russian newspapers, every day there are articles about the economic problems building up in Russia. So people can feel the effects of this war.
Steve, Paul, good to see you both. Thank you so much.